Shalom, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Double honors to the elders of GMS. Much love to you, brothers. Another quick news. Things are just happening hour by hour, seems like it, but they just implied sanctions on Russia. I mean, I seen it this morning on the news, but some brothers sent me some articles, and I thought I'd present it again at some important news because this is going to cause some effects. And I found some videos from about a week or two ago that coincide with that. So we'll play this and get into the scripts.
Good morning, everybody. In recent months, as the citizens of Ukraine have made their voices heard, we have been guided by a fundamental principle. The future of Ukraine must be decided by the people of Ukraine. That means Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity must be respected, and international law must be upheld. And so Russia's decision to send troops into Crimea has rightly drawn global condemnation. From the start, the United States has mobilized the international community in support of Ukraine, to isolate Russia for its actions, and to reassure our allies and partners. We saw this international unity again over the weekend, when Russia stood alone in the UN Security Council defending its actions in Crimea. And as I told President Putin yesterday, the referendum in Crimea was a clear violation of Ukrainian constitutions and international law, and it will not be recognized by the international community. Today I'm announcing a series of measures that will continue to increase the costs on Russia and on those responsible for what is happening in Ukraine. First, as authorized by the executive order I signed 2 weeks ago, we are imposing sanctions on specific individuals responsible for undermining the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and government of Ukraine. We're making it clear that there are consequences for their actions. Second, I have signed a new executive order that expands the scope of our sanctions. As an initial step, I'm authorizing sanctions on Russian officials, entities operating in the arms sector in Russia, and individuals who provide material support to senior officials of the Russian government. And if Russia continues to interfere in Ukraine, we stand ready to impose further sanctions. Third, we're continuing our close consultations with our European partners, who today in Brussels moved ahead with their own sanctions against Russia. Tonight, Vice President Biden departs for Europe, where he will meet with the leaders of our NATO allies, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And I'll be traveling to Europe next week. Our message will be clear. As NATO allies, we have a solemn commitment to our collective defense, and we will uphold this commitment. Fourth, we'll continue to make clear to Russia that further provocations will achieve nothing except to further isolate Russia and diminish its place in the world. The international community will continue to stand together to oppose any violations of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity, and continued Russian military intervention in Ukraine will only deepen Russia's diplomatic isolation and exact a greater toll on the Russian economy. Going forward, we can calibrate our response based on whether Russia chooses to escalate or to de-escalate the situation. Now, I believe there's still a path to resolve this situation diplomatically, in a way that addresses the interests of both Russia and Ukraine. That includes Russia pulling its forces in Crimea back to their bases, supporting the deployment of additional international monitors in Ukraine, and engaging in dialogue with the Ukrainian government, which has indicated its openness to pursuing constitutional reform as they move forward towards elections this spring. But throughout this process, we're going to stand firm in our unwavering support for Ukraine. As I told Prime Minister Yatsenyuk last week, the United States stands with the people of Ukraine and their right to determine their own destiny. We're going to keep working with Congress and our international partners to offer Ukraine the economic support that it needs to weather this crisis and to improve the daily lives of the Ukrainian people. And as we go forward, we'll continue to look at the range of ways we can help our Ukrainian friends achieve their universal rights and the security, prosperity, and dignity that they deserve.
Let's jump right into this next video.
Videos like this, please subscribe to this channel. One Truth for Life. On Tuesday, Reuters reported that a Kremlin aide, Sergei Glaziev, had announced that if the U.S. were to impose sanctions on Russia, Moscow may drop the dollar as a reserve currency and refuse to pay off any loans to U.S. banks, saying that Moscow could recommend that all holders of the U.S. Treasury sell them if Washington freezes the U.S. accounts of Russian businesses and individuals. Glaziev said, quote, "We would find a way not just to reduce our dependency on the United States to zero, but to emerge from those sanctions with great benefits for ourselves. An attempt to announce sanctions would end in a crash for the financial system of the United States, which would cause the end of the domination of the U.S. in the global financial system." That statement is startling by itself, but the true gravity of this situation is only evident when you consider it in context. China has taken Russia's side in the Ukraine conflict. They are, after all, allies, and China holds the lion's share of U.S. treasuries. If Russia puts out the call to drop the dollar, China would have a choice. Either hold on to those treasuries while the dollar slides, losing their shirts in the process, or join Russia and dump their holdings as well. It should be pretty obvious which way China would go. For a related article, see the link below entitled "The Extreme Right Emerging as the Dominant Voice in Ukraine." The effects of a coordinated bond sell-off by China and Russia would be earth-shattering. This would be the financial equivalent of a nuclear bomb being dropped. It is no exaggeration to say that such a move would mark the end of an era. Now, you would think that this would prompt some serious reflection and that diplomats would be scrambling to resolve this peacefully. But instead, Obama signed a sanction order anyway and revoked the visas of a number of Russian officials. All of this supposedly in response to the violence in Kiev, even though we now have leaked phone conversations that indicate that it was in fact the new coalition government in Ukraine that was responsible for the shootings and that the West knows this. For more information on this, see the link in the description box below. Now combine this with the fact that several U.S. officials met directly with neo-Nazi leaders prior to the coup in Ukraine, and these sanctions become even more ridiculous. For the list of sources for this video, please.
And this video was on March 3rd, and this is just to show you what can actually happen from sanctions. Now today, we know sanctions have been implied or have been put on Russia, so now you gotta take a look at this video from back then.
Washington's threats of sanctions might be tough to keep, according to experts, citing Russia's economic clout. And RT's Marina Kosira has been looking over the numbers, and she's here with me in the studio. Marina.
I am here with you, Yulia, and in fact these numbers, what they show us is the fact that it's unclear whether the European Union can in fact avoid these sanctions, can afford these sanctions, I should say. Now, let's take a look at where Russia stands globally in terms of its economy. First of all, as we can see here, it is the world's fifth country in terms of purchasing power, the largest there. Now, annual trade over 735 billion US dollars. That's a lot of money, but let's break it down and take a look at Russia's relationship with the EU. And let's take a look at what Russia in fact imports from the EU. Now, first of all, it's the EU's third trading partner. So we actually get 45% in terms of the automotive sector. Then we have 18% that's going towards chemicals and medicine as well. That's a lot of money that the EU, in fact, stands to lose. And if it loses, it will need to find other partners to whom it can sell this to. Now, if we, in fact, go further and take a look at what Russia exports to the EU, well, that's where we see more information there. In fact, if we just single out palladium, so Russia exports 40% of its global production of palladium to the EU. The EU is a massive client. So, but palladium as well, you can continue looking at what else is Russia is exporting. But if I can just point out that palladium is used in the high-tech services, in jewelry, a lot. Again, diamonds, there we can see them, second in global production. So that means, again, European countries would need to find other countries that they can find these products to. We know now that the G8 countries are in fact boycotting their upcoming summit in Sochi that was is scheduled for June, and it's doing that just to go back a little bit, I said that Russia is the 5th largest economy according to the World Bank. That's higher than its G8 partners like Germany, like France, and like the UK. So is this something that they could really afford to do? Can Russia, in fact, can the European Union afford to lose Russia as a trading partner? That remains to be seen. But this comes at a time when China is eyeing out emerging opportunities in Russia. And Russia has been looking eastwards for quite a long time now. So this could be the final push that Russia needed. And in fact, bilateral trade turnover between Russia and China is expected to reach 100 billion US dollars in 2014. And that's already, it's a top 10 partner, China, for Russia. Now, if we take it further and have a look at what kind of time these sanctions talks are coming at, Europe is struggling financially. Now, we know that European countries are in tatters. Ukraine is struggling financially. And let's take a look at the U.S. Well, first of all, this is just to show you once again that this is the gas. Russia actually exports a third of what Europe gets, is oil and gas sector. So this could, in fact, cripple Europe in general because they could not get gas. So, but going back to my original point, and that is that countries right now, such as the U.S., cannot afford to do that. Why? Because something like that could have a ripple effect on economies worldwide. And we see the U.S. debt ceiling keeps rising, the debt keeps rising. As I said, Europe is in tatters right now. So it remains to be seen who will actually end up paying for something like this.
All right, Artis Marina Kossera, thank you very much indeed for that thorough analysis.
With that, I'm going to say all praise to Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai. Double honors to the elders of GMS. Brothers, keep faith. We're almost home. Shalom.